Welcome to this week's End of Days Update, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We had such a great time last weekend in Redemptive Life Church. With Chris and Jasmine Romine, been going there many years, so much fun. Hey, if you're anywhere near Tulsa this weekend, we'll be in Owasso at Revolution Life Church. So we'll have a great time. We'll get into end times, and we'll see how close we are to the coming of the Lord. So the End of Days Update, we come every week to look at the different things that point to the coming of the Lord, specifically the gathering of nations for the Ezekiel 38 war. Because the rapture is signless, but the second coming has tons of signs. We have about 50 signs of the second coming. It's hard to go through all of them each week, but things are happening every single week that point to that. Why do we get into this? When you see the finish line, you run faster. It's not an escape theology, it's a hustle theology. You know, Jesus rebuked the crowd. He said, hey, you can tell what the weather's going to be, but you don't know your hour of visitation. So we get into this because the Lord wants you excited. He wants you expectant. Just like if you're in a wedding and your bride's walking down the aisle, you want her happy, you don't want her depressed. We're about to see Jesus face to face, and when we need a shot of spiritual, heavenly strength. And remember, your strength is tied to your joy, and talking about the coming of the Lord is to get your joy and expectation lifted up. So I heard one preacher tell me, he said, Joe, if you preach on the coming of the Lord, just get everybody's hopes up. Duh. That's exactly right. We're supposed to be excited because we're about to see Jesus face to face. If you hear end time preaching that scares you, it's not Bible, because there's nothing scary for the church. Now, for the world, it's very scary. So let's pick up on what's happened. Man, so much is happening. I want to try to get into it. And I'm going to slow down, so you might want to watch to the very end. So what's happened so far this last week? Many things are happening. You still don't have a government formed in Israel, but I do love that you had a U.S. confirmation of a coordinated effort with America and Israel against Iran. It's a pretty big deal. The generals met this last week in Israel and ironed this out. We've always been there to protect Israel, but never has there been such a coordinated confirmation of working with them. Now, why would that be like that? It's because Iran and the Revolutionary Guard said again this week, death to America, death to Israel. America is the great Satan, Israel's Satan. And this is what else the general for the Revolutionary Guard said. He said 21 of the U.S. bases are in their sights, along with Tel Aviv and Haifa. So when you have the braggadocious mentality to say the bases that they have in their sights, it made our government go, hey, we've got to be ready for this. They're literally anticipating Iran doing this. Why? Because Iran did kind of a test firing of this when they fired those missiles at the Saudi Arabian oil areas there. So the verbiage was so intriguing to hear how they called that. They specifically did that to see what the response would be, because Iran's having to do something. There's so much civil unrest in Iran right now. You had a couple hundred people get killed in the last 2 weeks protesting against Iran because the sanctions are taking effect, because the regular people there are not getting enough food, not getting enough medicine, and the oil prices and gas prices have gone up so much. So, but the European countries are subverting those sanctions and still trying to get them more stuff, or they would probably surrender even closer to saying they're not going to be firing on any of our bases. So it's absolutely crazy. It looks like there's a big truce in the Gaza area between Fatah and Hamas. It's been brokered by Qatar and a couple other nations. They're trying to get it to where they won't have this basically having war every single week with rockets going into Israel. Now, it's amazing. Each one of the new contestants in Israel to be prime minister have said they'll stop the cash flow from Qatar into Gaza, and that's not going to happen because that money keeps coming into them. So it's just interesting to watch the pressure things build up. Another thing that happened this last week is a continuation of the Pope. Remember how the Pope met with an imam a couple of weeks ago to promote one world religion? He met with the supreme Buddhist leader in Bangkok this last week, promoting also one world religion. The Catholics are screaming, hey, this is not very Catholic. He's literally promoting a one world religion, what the false prophet will do after the rapture of the church. So you're seeing the preliminaries of what the beast and the false prophet will do after we're gone. So that's absolutely crazy. Another thing that really caught my eye this week was Turkey. Erdogan came out and basically wouldn't sign the agreement to protect the Baltics to go along with NATO. In the middle of that, he used that platform to condemn Israel, saying that Israel has stolen Muslim land. Well, what happens every single week, that's a lie, of course, that's not right. Every single week there's archaeological evidence showing that Israel had a place in the land thousands of years ago. This last week, some mosaics were unearthed up in the Golan showing the tie between Israel and the land of Golan. And so many things happen every week. I don't have a chance to get into it, but that come up about the city of David. So we're preparing for great pressure to be put on the earth because Jesus is just about to come back. So you're watching all of these events that lead to that. And really the headlines are just startling because there's so much about what's going to happen right after we leave. And that is the Ezekiel 38 war of Russia coming down with Iran attacking Israel. Iran is set up for it, so it's bizarre. But we always go back to the scripture. How can we tell? How can we be bold about how close we are? Well, the signs tell you how close you are. If you're driving from Oklahoma City to Tulsa, that's 90 miles. One sign says 90 miles, next sign says 80, next sign says 50. You don't freak out. You know you're headed toward Tulsa from Oklahoma City. So we have Israel made a nation. We have Jerusalem won back. Jesus said the generation that sees those two events will not pass away till all is fulfilled. That's pretty clear and pretty concise. So that's happened in our lifetime, 1948 and 1967. After that, though, you've got the Hebrew language restored. You got the Ethiopian Jews brought back to the land of Israel, 18,000 in one day. You have the Temple Mount Institute. They're ready to start having sacrifices. You have the fertility of the land of Israel. You have the revival of the Roman Empire. Amazing. The Bible says you'd see that right before the coming of the Lord. The Capitol building's identical to the Tower of Babel. So you see all these tangible things. Amazing. You've got fish showing up in the Dead Sea that Ezekiel prophesied about 2,700 years ago. You've got foxes showing up on the Temple Mount. That's from Lamentations 5:18. So you have all these tangible things happening that are preaching to us. You have 172 different species of predatory birds that started showing up in the land of Israel, because God calls on the fowl of the air after the Ezekiel 38 war. And then after 7 years later at the Battle of Armageddon, he calls on the fowl of the air again. So tangible things to look at showing how close we are. One of the ones I like is men will be lovers themselves. We have selfie sticks. So that's pretty crazy. So we have signs, and then you go to signals. You had the blood red moons on Passover and Tabernacles a couple years ago. Pretty remarkable that God would have it saying, I died for you, I'm coming back. I died for you, I'm coming back on Passover and Tabernacles. So NASA calls it a tetrad. When's the last time you had 4 in a row on Passover and Tabernacles? 1967 when Jerusalem was won back. Then 1948 when Israel's made a nation. And 1492 at the Edict of Expulsion when the Jews were kicked out of Spain. So that's radical in our face signals. After that, you had the Bethlehem Star. We don't hear a lot of preaching on that, but wow, you had Jupiter, Regulus, and Venus come together at the birth of Jesus. The constellation was Virgo. Well, this last year, NBC Nightly News said we have a celestial event. We got Jupiter, we got Regulus, we got Venus coming together. The Bethlehem Star, first time in 2,000 years. What was the constellation? Leo. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So many more heavenly events happening on certain days that coincide with certain things with Israel. So many you can't even get into them. They're very specific, though, about sending signals to the nation of Israel that the Messiah is about to come. We know him as Jesus, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So what do we do as a church? You help your local pastor, help your local church. You're more engaged. What happens when you're about to get married? You're engaged, so you talk to each other. Your relationship gets stronger and stronger all the way up to the wedding. So we're all of a sudden going to see the manifestation of Jesus coming back for the church. That's called the rapture of the church. We'll be caught up. People go, well, why doesn't the church have to go through the tribulation? The number one purpose of the tribulation is a time of Jacob's trouble. It's pressure put on Israel to accept Jesus as their Messiah. And Jesus will present himself to his brethren just like Joseph did. And you have so much authority, he has to take the church off the earth so he can have Old Covenant time. It's 7 years of Old Covenant time. So you're watching the stage being set for that period of 7 years called the tribulation. So we're so blessed. Let's do the will of God as fast as we can, get as many people born again as we can, take as many people with us as we can. These are great days of change because Jesus is about to come back to the planet. Man, thanks for watching this week. We'll see you this next Wednesday. Look for us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and about 50 other places. We're getting ready to expand and do a lot more stuff to get the message out. We got to get the message out how close we are to the King coming back to the planet. Have a blessed, awesome week. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks for joining us today at the End of Days Update. If you'd like to be notified every time there's a new post, just go to the EDU at josephmorris.com and subscribe to receive email alerts. If these posts and updates have been a blessing to you, please consider making a one-time donation to help get the message out, or even becoming a monthly partner with Joseph Morris Ministries. Thanks again for tuning in to the EDU, and we'll see you next week.